Good day to everyone. I hope everybody is doing well. And so today I will be presenting three main topics, namely world Englishes, English as an international language, and language and identity. So we will first talk about world Englishes. So world Englishes, it is an institutionalized varieties of English. When we say institutionalized, it means established in practice or custom. So world Englishes is also a term for emerging localized or indigenized varieties of English, especially varieties that have developed in territories influenced by the United Kingdom or the United States. So world Englishes refers to the difference in the English language that emerge as it is used in various contexts across the world. So Catchrew distinguishes three major types of users of English. So we have the native users of English. So when we say native users of English, it refers to someone who has learned and used English from an early childhood. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that the speaker's only language is, it is. I mean, it does not necessarily mean that it is the speaker's only language, but it is and has been the primary means of concept formation and information. So second, we have non-native users of English who use an institutionalized second language variety of English. So they use English as a second language. So often official language in a broad range of intranational domains. So these varieties, are characterized by nativization. The third type of you, I mean, the third type of user of English is the non-native users of English who consider as a foreign language or who consider English as a foreign language and use it in a highly restricted domain. So these includes countries that introduce English as a foreign language in education for the purpose of communicating in English with other groups. So we'll try to look on the Catcher's three circles of English. So this is actually the most influential model of the spread of English. So in this model, the diffusion of English is captured in terms of three concentric circles. So we have inner circle, outer circle, and the expanding circle. So speakers in the first group as members of the inner circle, examples, speakers from the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. So the inner circle, it refers to English, as it originally took shape and was spread across the world in the first diaspora. When we say diaspora, uh, it is a large group of people with a similar heritage who have since moved out to places all over the world. Okay, so the second group, as the members of the outer circle, speakers from the Philippines and South Africa. So the outer circle of English was produced by the second diaspora of English, so which spread the language through imperial expansion by Great Britain in Asia and Africa. So in these regions, English is not the native tongue. Like in the Philippines, it's not our native tongue, but serves as a useful lingua franca between ethnic and language group. Okay, so the last group as the members of the expanding circle. Examples, speakers from China and Hungary. So these encompasses countries where English plays no historical or government role, but where it is nevertheless widely used as a medium of international communication. Okay, so these users of language use English in a very, I mean, in highly restricted domains. According to Catchrew, World Englishes have developed largely in former British colonies, where English is used in many domains on a daily basis. So these varieties of English have been influenced by local culture and language. So now, while this Catchrews model, this three concentric circles here, this was instrumental in initially recognizing the validity of varieties of English. But the spread of English has brought with it more complexity in use than can be captured by the model. So the spread of English is indeed very complex. So I have here two pairs of compelling views. Now, what world interpretations attempt to do is to develop a model that describes or legitimizes a pluricentric view. So what is this pluricentric view of English? It is one that moves away from a view of there being just one standard. So when you say pluricentric, it's not, it's not having one standard, but it is a language with several interacting codified standard forms. Moreover, Catcher also argues that new Englishes cannot be characterized in terms of acquisitional inadequacy or be judged by the norms of English in inner circle countries. Okay, and he said that English has sufficiently blended itself with the cultural and social complex of the country and has thereby become culture bound. One example of that is in the classroom setting. So way back in high school, if we can still remember, I think we laughed at those, who cannot pronounce English words well. It's maybe because we have a reference point. We have the standard. For example, if we follow the American way of speaking, we sometimes laugh at those who cannot pronounce words well. And it's because we have the standard. We have an American accent as our standard, an American way. But the World Englishes paradigm attempts to place all varieties of English on par with each other without anyone being a reference point. So all varieties of English have to be equal. So this is, what World English's paradigm attempts to do. So we will now proceed to English as an international language. In sorting through various perspectives on present-day English use, it is helpful to consider Pennycook's categorization of current views toward the spread of English. So the first is what he calls the homogeny position, which views the spread of English as leading to a homogenization of world culture. So here, homogeny. It is actually a process of making things uniform or similar. Okay, now for some, homogenization is viewed favorably. So other agree to this, homogeny position. However, others see homogenization as essentially a negative feature of globalization because it reflects imperialism and colonization. So the second position, delineated by Pennycook, is the heterogeny position, in which individuals like Brad Catchrew describe the features of World Englishes as a sign of pluricentrism that has been brought about by globalization. So now, the goal of the World Englishes paradigm has been to describe the manner in which English has become localized, creating different varieties of English around the world. Now, while the homogeny argument tends to ignore all these local appropriations and adaptation, this heterogeny argument tends to ignore the broader political context of the spread of English. So indeed, there is a constant insistence of the neutrality of English. This is a position that avoids all the crucial concerns about around both the global and local politics of the language. So, the ultimate effect of globalization on the use of English is neither homogenization nor heterogenization. Rather, it is a fluid mixture of cultural heritage and popular culture, of change and tradition, of border crossing and ethnic affiliation, of global appropriation and local contextualization. This, he contends, is what the new global order is about. So, sharing Pennycook's belief that more attention needs to be given to the power and struggle in language. So, he uses this term English as an international language as an umbrella to characterize the use of English. So, in the recent research of Cabota and Vaquet, 2009, in this study, we can examine the role of English as an international language in the linguistic landscape of the rural community. So, the study is, the research of Cabota and Vaquet is in Japan, where there is a growing number of, language minority migrant workers. So, mainly from Brazil, China, Thailand, and Vietnam. So, the local lingua franca is, of course, Japanese. However, the current emphasis on English as an international language in Japan has resulted in all the children learning English. It's the English that they focus on learning. So rather than any of the minority language spoken in the local area. So as I mentioned a while ago, there were language minorities such as Brazil, China, Thailand, and Vietnam. But children are focused more on learning English. So it has also resulted in a commonly accepted assumption that the way to communicate with these migrants is through Japanese or English rather than other languages. So their belief is that they cannot soar into the world using other languages. But it's only English that they believe will help them, get or see greener pastures. So, with English being considered by many as global language, individuals around the world are striving to learn English, leading to a large English learning industry. So, in summarizing current research on EIL, or English as an international language, there are three areas in which have gained important insights into the teaching and learning of English. So this have to do with imagined communities as incentives for English learning, the role of identity in English language learning, and the value of technology as a learning tool. So let's have, this imagined communities as incentives for English learning. Knowing English is like possessing the fabled Aladdin's lamp. What does this Aladdin's lamp represent? Well, this is actually, the gates to international business, technology, science, and travel. So this quote, knowing English is like possessing the fabled Aladdin's lamp. It means that knowing English permits one to open the linguistic gates to international business, technology, science, and travel. So when we say, it's like saying greener pastures or like widened horizon. So now let's try to examine the study of Norton and Camel. They conducted a study with middle school children in Karachi, Pakistan, in which young learners of English were asked to reflect on what they would like to do to help Afghan refugee children in Pakistan thrive. Now, many of the young Pakistani children believed that it was important for the Afghan refugees to develop literacy and to learn some English. The reason they gave for wanting the Afghan refugee children to learn English illustrate the kind of narrations they can idealize. They can idealize the benefits of joining an imagined community of English speakers. So this is a statement of a Pakistani student. English is the language spoken commonly. This language is understood throughout the world. If the Afghan children learn English, know English, speak English, they will be able to discuss their problems with the people of the world. Okay, so next is the role of identity in language learning. So for us to understand or for us to know the role of identity in language learning, let us try to examine the Harclaw's ethnographic study of 3 English learners transitioning from a U.S. high school to a community college. So this study is particularly insightful on the relationship between educational institutions and learner identity. So within the high school context investigated by Harclaw, the 3 target students tended to be affiliated with ESOL program. So he found that high school students, were highly motivated. They provide inspiration for everyone by their historic struggles during their immigration to the United States, and also their acquisition of a language. But at the same time, it's inevitable that the teachers often express doubts. Okay. Now, they doubt, they are skeptical about the students' academic and cognitive ability. So the teachers, cast this student's ability to communicate in 2 languages not as a special talent or skill, but rather as a disability. Now, it's a sad reality that teachers view students' ability that way. And one teacher also said that it must be like somebody who's very smart and has a stroke. So, this native language teacher, or these teachers who are native users of English, they judge students in this way. So this serves as the identity of the students for them. So the third one is technology and language learning. So Lam's study documents how computer-mediated communication allows language learners to assume a new identity, one that can enhance language literacy. So this, the study of Lam is, about a Chinese immigrant teenager to the United States. So at first, the Chinese immigrant name is Almon. So when Lam first began studying Almon, he had little confidence writing in English. So which Almon contended was always his worst subject. However, after designing his own homepage and joining an electronic community interested in Japanese pop culture, he gained confidence in his literacy through his online exchanges with pen pals. So Lam contends that the community Almon joined on the web allowed him to develop a new identity, one that gave him self-confidence. So, Lam concludes that whereas classroom English appeared to contribute to Almon's sense of exclusion of So Lamb concludes that whereas classroom English appeared to contribute to Almon's sense of exclusion or marginalization, his inability to speak like a native, which paradoxically contradicts the school's mandate to prepare students for the workplace and civic environment, the English he controlled on the internet enabled him to develop a sense of belongingness and connectedness to a global English speaking community. Okay. So the last topic we have is on language and identity. So in order for us to understand the relationship between language and identity, it is important to understand the post-structuralist theory of language, which is defined as discourse. So how does a post-structuralist theory of language as discourse help us to understand the relationship between language and identity? So if we take the position that linguistic communities are not homogeneous and consensual, but often heterogeneous and conflicted, we need to understand how power is implicated in relationships between individuals, communities, and nations. So this is directly relevant to our understanding of the relationships between language and identity. So as Bourdieu 1997 notes, the value ascribed to speech cannot be understood apart from the person who speaks, and the person who speaks cannot be understood apart from the language networks of social relationships. So every time we speak, we are negotiating or renegotiating our sense of self in relation to the larger social world. So our gender, race, class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, among other characteristics, are all implicated in this negotiation of identity. So now let's try to look on the research of feminist post-structuralists such as Sweden 1997. This has been particularly influential in helping language educators to theorize identity, or what feminist post-structuralists called subjectivity, which is derived from the term subject. So the use of the term subject is compelling because it serves as a constant reminder that a person's identity must always be understood in relational terms. So we have here, we have here subject of a set of relationships or subject to a set of relationship. Well, these two here are totally different. So when we say a subject, subject of a set of relationships, it means, it's in a position of power. But subject to a set of relationships, it means in a position of reduced power. So in this view, the common sense notion of the real me remains a fiction. So here, in conclusion, in post-structuralist theory, subjectivity and language are theorized as mutually constitutive. So, they affect each other interdependently rather than linearly. So here, research findings on language and identity with reference to 4 areas of research. The 4 areas address research on identity and investment, identity and imagined communities, identity categories, and educational change. And last one is identity and literacy. Okay, last one is the identity and investment. So most theories at the time assumed motivation was a character trait of the individual language learner, and that learners who failed to learn the target language were not sufficiently committed to the learning process. On the contrary, Norton found that high levels of motivation did not necessarily translate into good language learning, and that unequal relations of power between language learners and target language learners was a common theme in data. So first, we'll talk about identity and investment. So most theories at the time assumed motivation was a character trait of the individual language learner, and that learners who failed to learn the target language were not sufficiently committed to the learning process. So I think this has been some, but not all. The belief of so many teachers that the more motivated a learner is, so the more he learns. But theories of motivation did not pay sufficient attention to unequal relations of power between language learners and target language speakers. So the research of Norton found that high levels of motivation did not necessarily translate into good language learning, and that unequal relations of power between language learners and target language speakers was a common theme in the data. So for this reason, he developed the construct of investment to complement constructs of motivation in the field of second language acquisition. So if learners invest in the target language, they do so with understanding that they will acquire a wider range of symbolic and material resources, which will in turn increase the value of their cultural capital. So it's unlike the notion of instrumental motivation, which often conceive the language learner as having a fixed personality. Now this investment, this construct of investment conceives of the language learner as having a complex identity, changing across time and space, reproduced in social interaction. Next one is identity and imagined communities. So an extension of interest in identity and investment concerns the imagined communities that language learners aspire to join when they learn a new language. So Norton drew his research with 2 adult immigrant language learners to argue that, while these learners were initially actively engaged in classroom practices, the realm of their desired community extended beyond the 4 walls of the classroom. So this imagined community was not accessible to their respective teacher, who unwittingly alienated the 2 language learners, who then withdrew from the language classroom. Now, this is the question. This has to be the question, or this, questions should have been considered by the teacher. What community practices do these learners seek to learn? And second, what indeed constitutes the community for them? Next one is identity, categories, and educational change. While much research on language and identity explores the multiple and intersecting dimensions of learners' identities, there is a growing body of research that seeks to investigate the way in which particular relations of race, gender, class, and sexual orientation may impact the language learning process. So in Ibrahim's research with a group of French-speaking continental African students in a Franco-Ontarian high school in Canada, this study explores the impact on language learner of becoming Black. Okay, he argues that the students' linguistic styles, and in particular their use of Black stylized English, was a direct outcome of being imagined and constructed as Black by hegemonic discourses and groups. Well, that's all for today. I hope you have learned something. So, indeed, varieties of English is very complex, and, it needs one to take time to be able to gain a deeper understanding or a deep understanding. So, if you have corrections or maybe add-ons to these topics, just feel free to post on the forum section. So thank you so much. Thank you once again, and please have a good day. Bye.